And James Bond will open. What I'm saying. So,
evening.
How are we all?
I'm all right. I'm a bit tired, actually. A bit tired this weekend. I don't know why.
Yeah, I can sense.
You can sense it.
Yeah, I can sense it.
Yeah, just a little bit. I don't know. It's been a strange few days. One thing and another. So. Mother had a bit of a fall yesterday. She's all right, but it means
she okay?
Yeah, she seems okay. But it just sort of piles the stress on a little bit, doesn't it? So
it does, yes. Well, let's all say hello to everybody's mothers tonight. Mum's watching. Hello, Mum. And all the best to Drew's mums and everybody who's watching tonight. Hello to your mums.
And Pavu's a year older. Happy birthday. And Pavu's a week older. A year older.
He is a week older. It's the big 5-0 for him, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Sorry?
Do you remember that?
What's that?
5-0.
I can remember mine, yeah.
I can vaguely remember mine, but it seems like a lifetime ago already.
I can remember mine quite distinctly for reasons I'll tell you after the show. So, because it was a very nice day out, that's why.
Sure,
On that note, anyway, hello everybody. Welcome to the Interesting Modelling Company Sunday service. We've got some news items to get through tonight. We've got some modelling projects that we've been working on to talk about tonight. So I think without further ado, we'll Drew take it away and talk about your little Mustang.
The little Mustang, yes. Well, the little Mustang is. The little Mustang is rapidly coming to a sort of conclusion at the moment. I got the varnish on a few hours ago, and got all the masking off of it, and we're starting to bring it together now, as you can see. I added some wing root chipping and stuff, and I've got to tone that back with a little bit of oil paint. So basically, we're at the stage where we're going into doing all some light weathering on it, and then adding things like the drop tanks and stuff, all those sorts of final details. The thing that I was looking at the drop tanks and thinking, should I weather the drop tanks? You know, all the usual stuff where you're adding sort of stains from the fuel filler ports and stuff like that. And then you start to think, would they have been weathered at all?
Yes.
Would those drop tanks have been weathered at all? Bearing in mind that in early 1944, British companies were churning out hundreds and hundreds of them a week, and they were getting banged off during their first flight every time. As soon as they crossed the border into Germany, they were banged off, ready for combat. So the vast majority of these tanks never, whether they were these metal ones or the resin-infused paper ones, they never flew more than once.
I've seen pictures of them at a base, and this is.
I would imagine you could get some dirt on the underside and stuff like that, where they've been sat around waiting to be put on the aircraft and things like that. But in terms of like the fuel filler stains and stuff like that,
no,
they've been stuck on the aircraft, filled, and then sort of 2 hours later they would have been banged off the aircraft.
I think they probably might have had a little bit of, if they've been sat outside, they probably, with a bit of grime and rain and everything.
Yeah, a little bit of some rain marks and a little bit of dirt along the underside, maybe, where they've sat around. But all the usual stuff where you got these oil and fuel stains and stuff, it just wouldn't have happened. They weren't. They didn't exist long enough. They were, and in many cases they were probably. They were probably being flown on the aircraft within 3 or 4 days of being made.
Mm-hmm.
Because the operational tempo in early 1944 and through late 1944 with these aircraft, was such that, and the requirement that they had to get into, Berlin, they effectively had to be able to get to Berlin and back, and their operational tempo and the amount of combat they were engaged in meant that they were just going through them like gangbusters. They were just, these tanks were just. I'm surprised more of them weren't actually painted at all. They were just unbelievable amounts, and that's coming off the back of listening to listening to Fighter Group podcast at the moment, but not podcast, audiobook at the moment, and you start to get an idea of the kind of operational tempo that the US 8th Air Force was, the fighter groups as well as the bomber groups were engaged in at this time, and none of this stuff had a chance to really get worn out. So
yes, but you're getting in the way of fun modelling, though, aren't you?
I am, but on the other hand, I'm sort of also thinking that perhaps it's I'm not huge on that kind of oil stain thing quite a lot of the time. And Jim's asking there, were those tanks made of aluminium? Yeah, they were. Well, steel or aluminium, I think probably aluminium. And then you had the other sort of resin infused paper, what is it known as a paper tanks? They weren't really paper, they were resin, really. So there were, and they were being made in the UK as well. So all this tank manufacture was subcontracted to companies in the UK, because that's local company, isn't it? It's you don't want to bring that sort of thing from the US if you don't have to, and you've got the ability.
That was one of the things I found out years and years ago was 8th Air Force, when they were based over here, is how often people or how often researchers would go down the route of thinking that when temporary camouflage was applied to them that it was olive drab. For the most part, it wasn't. It was RAF dark green, because that was
green and medium sea grey and stuff. Yeah,
it was the locally available paint. So so you're coming towards the. I still haven't got hold of one of those Mustangs yet, but hey ho, you're coming towards the end.
Just phenomenal.
Well, that's the thing I was going to ask. Wait for me to answer the question. So you're coming towards the end of building your first armor Mustang. What are your impressions still as favourable as when you opened the box originally?
John, if I had another armor Mustang sat here ready to go, I would start it. I would absolutely. It is just speechless. It's just absolutely, the one or two minor issues, like with the tail, the vertical tail that I had, must be down to me, because given the way the rest of the kit goes together, that must be something. And even then, it was like 3 or 4 minutes to solve. If there was a problem with the tail here where it joins on, and you can't see it now, and it was just literally a drop of Mr. Surfacer and a wipe over, and it was done. But I added the undercarriage today, and it kind of the main undercarriage legs lock in 2 different places when you put them into place, to make sure that there's a kind of a socket on the lower part of the upper wing. But there's also a hole in the lower wing. So it goes into this hole in the lower wing and then locates into a socket in the upper wing. And it just sets everything, a tiny little dab of super glue, and it's set in place. Then I could put the wheels on. Then an hour later, put the doors on, and everything is just, set up to fit absolutely spot on.
Tamiya-esque then.
Yeah, but yeah, in terms of the way that sort of everything's locked in to place, yeah, very much so, very much so. In fact, I had to give a very, very slight swipe across the wing root on the fuselage before I offered the wing up, because it wouldn't have fit just. Didn't quite slip in, but that was a minor job.
Tight tolerances.
Yes, I see Pete there is saying, apart from sink marks on the starboard fuselage side. I know what you mean, Pete. Yes, but I mean, the thing is, with a flat finish, you can't see them anyway. I did notice when that one was glossed up. I did notice, because I thought that the sink marks wouldn't be visible, and they are visible on a gloss surface, showing through. But once it had been matted down, they were completely invisible. So, if you're doing one of the natural metal ones, it might need a quick application of Mr. Surfacer and a light rub down. But that aside, it's just it's just new standards again. New standards again.
I gotta say, looking at the artwork for that initial release, I still go back to my first impressions, and that is, as and when I get hold of one, I still want to do that captured Japanese one. I just think it looks, you know, not being contrary, but
that's the least attractive scheme I've ever seen on a Mustang. I think it's horrendous, but it's interesting. It's interesting, but I think it's horrendous. Yeah, it's just armor just keep going from strength to strength. I will say that although I haven't built the IBG Dora yet, I think the armor Mustang is superior to the IBG Dora, but there's not a lot in it. And we've got both these manufacturers from Poland now producing kits of this quality. Dave said the tread doesn't quite match up on each side of the tires. That's the sort of thing that I didn't even, barely even noticed. The tread's so fine. Once I'd given it a light rub over around that part, it just looks slightly. It looks like a slightly worn tire. Because the tires get worn out like any other thing. It looks
like it's not going to pass its MOT. Let's put it that way.
Not even that bad. It's just a little bit light on tread, but yeah, it's you can if you want to get excuse me, if you want to get that pernickety, yeah, you can pick little things like that, like the tread on each side of the tires doesn't quite match up and stuff like that. But does that alter my overall view of the model? No, not an ounce. Not an ounce. It's just it's pretty much in a league of its own in this scale. The only thing it did make me do about half an hour ago was I went onto eBay looking for a Tamiya P47D in 72nd scale, the Razorback, because suddenly I want to do one. Yeah.
Mike Williams says, I saw a Flyhawk Dauntless in the plastic last week. OMG. The details are just on another level. Super fine raised rivets and some extraordinary slide molded pieces. Need to get one myself. Yeah, that's keeping an eye out for that, because that's
it's one. It's an attractive. It's a beautiful aeroplane, the Dauntless, and Flyhawk have got just a stellar reputation for their ships and tanks, haven't they? So I was
just thinking about that the other week. Is that we've got Flyhawk they've done the Dauntless now, but in the scheme of things, in 72nd scale, we haven't got a state-of-the-art kit of the Kingfisher.
No,
we haven't got a state-of-the-art kit of the Devastator. There have been kits by some of the smaller manufacturers, but when you look at something like the Kingfisher, that's tailor-made for somebody like Special Hobby, isn't it?
Yeah, you think so.
How many colour schemes can you throw at Kingfishers in either the land version or the seaplane version?
Give it time. Somebody will do it. I wouldn't be. Sword have done it, haven't they? Sword have done it.
Yeah, but it's Sword. They can be a little
bit. Yeah, I see Pete's talking about the rudder pedals there. Pete, the rudder pedals have been one of my talking points of this model to explain just how fine the detail is on it. You can read the writing on the rudder pedals in 72nd scale. How long that lasts in the mold, I wouldn't like to say. That might be one of those thousand shots out of the mold, and that bit of detail's gone, but it's there at the moment. It's just beautiful.
Excellent. Well, I think at some stage, I think we should have we should run an armor month on the Int Mod Co and get people building some armor kits, because at least that will get me building one of my Hurricanes now, because I've got 4 of the darn things. So
yeah, well, I've built one of the Hurricanes, and I've got a couple of the Mark IIs at home now, and I've got a stack of the Wildcats in various marks. So it's and all of those kits are just brilliant. They have not put a foot wrong so far, since they moved from being a limited run manufacturer, to to a full scale, full steel tool, normal long run injection molding company, they haven't put a foot wrong, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. Thing is, it's like you can look at the Mustang and say it's a lot better than their first, the Hurricane Mark 1. And people almost think you're criticizing the Hurricane, and you're not. What that is an indicator of how far they've come. Not that there's anything at all wrong with the Hurricane, because I built it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, you start to judge every. It's easy to start judging all of a manufacturer's output by their latest kit.
Mm-hmm.
You start going, oh yeah, the Hurricane's starting to look a bit behind the times compared to this, but no, it's not. It's just this is so much more advanced. So
James Ray makes a good point. Grum and Duck, modern kit of this available?
Yeah.
No, there isn't. There isn't. Rob Monfils says AZ did the Kingfisher.
Oh,
yeah, rest in case. Yeah. You still need a modern kit. Sorry, AZ.
Still need a kit.
Yeah, sorry, AZ. I did try building your chipmunks, and to be honest, I'd probably, if I wanted to build a 72nd scale chipmunk, I'd still build the old Airfix one and rework that, because at least the bits fit. So.
Yeah, I'm afraid, as far as KP and AZ go these days, or AZ, whatever you want to call it, I just don't count them. I don't even look at their output, because it's just not worth, as far as I'm concerned.
It's a shame, because the KP Avia S199s are actually very nice kits. And they're actually quite nice, but anyway, perhaps we'll talk about that another time. Yeah, Dave Fleming says, there we go. Dave Fleming says AZ have gone backwards. Yeah, it's a shame, because like I say, the CS199, very nice kit.
Yeah,
so,
it's an all right. I built the S199, and it's an all right model. It's true.
Anyhow.
Limited run, but anyhow.
I finished a model. Well, I've almost finished a model this weekend, which I started back on when we were doing the old festival of modeling, and it is my Airfix beach buggy. Actually, the model itself the vehicle's been finished for a few months now, but figures. So I had a go at the figures over the weekend using my awesome the Army Painter wet palette here. And I tell you what, that certainly did help. But those figures are not going to win any prizes in a figure contest. They're not going to win any prizes anywhere. But it's still, I can see how painting with acrylics works, and there are things that sort of kind of worked-ish. It's enough to want me to continue experimenting and doggedly trying to get to grips with acrylic painting for figures, even if they are still not going to be anywhere near the standards that I want them to be. But there, I think Sher came out better on that one when Sonny did. Yeah, I enjoyed it. That kit is an absolute blast, and I would say that if you are in a bit of a funk, or you're looking to do something a little bit different, go and grab an Airfix beach buggy. I'm really chuffed now that I can actually, when I kind of go through the old kit catalogs and I see that in there, it's gone from being something that I always thought, I'd love to build one of them one day. Do you know what? I built one.
You've done it now, haven't you? You've done it. So.
I've done it.
like Bill says, that doesn't look very happy.
Well, they are in Brean Down, so it's Brean Sands. It's very cold. It's not the kind of weather to be kind of like going dressed like that,
Right.
So, yeah, exactly.
Well, there you go.
I still think it's Brean Sands on that box art, honestly. So, probably going from there to Burnham-on-Sea. They're kind of along the beach that way.
Along the beach, hoping to beat the tide.
Hoping to beat the tide, yeah. But do you know what? That's my project of the year this year, because it's just been, it's like when you build something and you just enjoy it. You just have that every time you come back to it. You have that kind of good vibe feeling. You probably
There's nothing that doesn't. It never feels like a chore.
No,
It feels like a chore to go back to pick it up, does it?
Yeah.
And that's where that is what I would say with this Mustang. It's never felt like a chore at any point to do anything to it. Do you know what I mean? Everything's just gone right. So,
yeah,
yes.
And I gotta say, when Airfix put up that image over the weekend of that classic catalogue box art with all the models, so the classic catalogue cover with all the models on it, and oops, Daisy, my microphone's come off. And yeah, I remember seeing that as a kid and thinking, oh, I'd like to build that. I'd like to build that. I'd like to build that. Do you know what? Looking at that cover, we'll try and call up a copy of it in a minute, actually, but we'll do it towards the end of the show. But there are some on there that I look at that. I still look at it and think, oh, I'd love to build one of them. I'd love to build one. We'll do that before the end of the show. I'll grab an image of that and we'll have a chat about that, because that's just like that's a classic, iconic catalogue, that is. Anyway, shall we hurtle on to some news. And we will kick off with amusing hobby. Now they are doing this. They're calling it Tiger P. Essentially, it was the kind of production variant of and he's just lost his notes here for a second. It was a production variant of the VK45. Now this was that kind of like, how do we describe it? It is that kind of missing link in the Tiger story, in as much as they ended up canning the turreted version of this and converting them all into Ferdinands and then elephants. So it is part of the Tiger story. However, a single VK45, completed the Tiger P with the chassis number 150013 rather, saw combat as a command tank to two Ferdinands on the on the Russian front. So one can assume that is what that vehicle is supposed to depict, the single Tiger P that actually saw active combat service.
I don't know if I'm seeing things, but has that tank got... I don't know. That's what I was about to ask. Has that vehicle got 2 drive sprockets on each side?
Yes, because that was a feature of the VK45.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That seems most peculiar. I don't think I've ever seen that on a tank before.
Yeah. In fact, I'm just going to go and look up a picture of an elephant tank, and lo and behold, yes, they did. It is one of those details. Yeah, they had drive sprockets, toothed sprockets at both ends. Discuss.
Yeah. No, it's the most peculiar. My next question would be: were they both driven or not?
That's a good point. I wouldn't know. I'm sure somebody out there will tell us.
Because if it's not driven, it's a pointless affectation.
Unless it was purely something in order to maintain traction or something. I don't know.
It's most peculiar, but that wouldn't, just if they're not both driven, it's pointless having it, really.
Well, now you're coming on to why the VK45 the elephant and the Ferdinand, or the Ferdinand the elephant, they weren't exactly stellar like the Tiger. Let's put it that way.
They had electric motors. Oh, yeah. Right.
Okay, what was that comment? Let's have a quick look.
Baghead 1996. I think the drive sprocket was like that because they had electric motors.
Okay.
Which would put them well ahead of the game as well in terms of technology. If they had electric drive, they had an engine. They were using the engine to generate electricity for electric motors, like you get on the massive lorries you see in open cast mines these days and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they're all individually.
Swindle says four-wheel drive for off-road. Indeed, I think that's probably a logical explanation there. Yeah, this kit will come with a full interior. This isn't the first 35th scale VK45 or Tiger P, if you like, but this looks like being perhaps the most detailed. So yeah, it all depends. Your enthusiasm for this kit all depends on your enthusiasm for building models with interiors, because as ever, I think the only way you're ever going to see all this is if you actually kind of build it almost in this state
like that. Yeah,
yeah.
It's a very compact tank, isn't it? I mean, you're all that enormous engine at the back there. And you always, the driver's compartment and the turret are all kind of squeezed into one little spot at the front. It's really peculiar. It's really
it was a bit of a, like I say, it was a bit of a dead end in terms of development. Although it then went on to become the Ferdinand and then the Elephant. But yeah. It's like I say, historically, it is an interesting and significant tank, and it is part, like I say, it's part of the Tiger story. So, I can see people who are into their Tigers bagging these. Apparently, these images have already been red penned. So
excellent.
Yeah.
I feel better already knowing that somebody's been at it with a red pen.
Absolutely. I gotta say, from what I read of the comments, I just thought, well, that's things, okay, they're errors, but they're things that you could easily correct at the workbench. Although if you say that these days, it just seems to spark people into kind of like fury for some reason. Obviously not Sherman fury, but there we go. But yeah, this looks like a amusing hobby. Seem to be upping their game, so I like the look of it. It's not something I'd probably build, but I do like the look of it.
No, I mean, we know my general antipathy to German World War II armour at the best of times, but it's an interesting shape. It's an interesting enough shape, and it looks like a really nice piece of tooling. So hopefully, those for whom it does appeal will get a good build out of it. I see Jim's asking the question there: red penned? Yes, Jim. Yes, red penned. It's an old modelling term.
It means somebody's been at it with red lines and things pointing out all the
saying
errors.
This is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong. They got this wrong. This isn't the right angle. That's the wrong circle. This is in the wrong place.
There is the Tirpitz in the background,
Tirpitz in the background and a cat with a melon on its head.
We will explain that at another stage. Right, let's move on. Right, now, this is coming from Border, and I got to say, it's unusual because this is the kind of thing that used to be done years ago by the likes of Verlinden Productions, and that is they're doing a Type 7-C U-boat, but they're not. This is 35th scale, but it's not an entire U-boat. It is
right. This is 35th, so it's just the upper deck part. It's the actual.
Right, presumably because people can then recreate that as a vignette of some sort, or they could scratch build the rest of the submarine. It's entirely up to them.
That's really nice, isn't it? That's a cool idea. I like that because you quite often see quite a lot of people do these dioramas where they chop the subject up a bit, don't they, to make it fit into the diorama. And that's almost saving you that little bit of work, isn't it? I'm a fan of that. I really am. I think that's.
Let's put it this way: it's for people who fancy building a submarine in a larger scale, but don't fancy building, having 4 or 5 foot of 35th scale submarine clogging up their workbench, and people who like a nice weathering challenge.
Well, I was about to say, the weathering on that is going to be it's a nice little piece to weather, isn't it? The bridge. Well, that's what's called, the bridge.
Sorry,
I was just looking at the and I was going the middle bit. It's the bridge.
Yeah, the bridge. Yeah, the bridge, the conning tower.
Yes.
I can't say if I ever got around to building one of these, I'd be straight onto Kim Smith, because she painted the submarines in Hunt for October, and I'd be picking her brains on how to do this, because I think anybody saw the interview we had with her back over the festival. Goodness me, the paint job she did on those subs is absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, it doesn't come in any figures, and it doesn't come with the rest of the submarine. So what you get is literally that piece of hull, the gun, the bridge / conning tower. No figures. You also get the mechanism for loading the torpedoes into the sub as well. So you can, you could do it almost as a quayside diorama of sorts.
It's a vignette, isn't it? It's a vignette in its own right.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a component part of a vignette.
Yeah.
I really like that. I'm really quite taken with that. Again, not something I'd probably build for myself, just because it's not the subject I build. But
No.
yeah, I'm a fan of that. I really am.
Well, the thing is, people are always banging on about, oh, not another Spitfire, and not another this and not another that. Well, this is imaginative. This is truly imaginative. So,
but the kind of people who say that, John, are the kind of people who are going to say, "Oh, it's the wrong scale now."
Well, or where's the rest of the submarine?
Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, it does say on the box only bridges and weapons are included. So yeah, you don't get the crew, water not included, and you don't get a sinking ship either. So, but no, I think that's a fabulously bold idea from Border. It'd be interesting to see how far they push this and whether they do anything else in a similar vein. But as I say, it says a lot for the market at the moment that you're getting imaginative releases like this coming out.
Yeah, I'm foursquare behind that. Absolutely. I hope it does well for them.
Yeah.
I hope it does well for them, because that's a. I can just see in my mind's eye, I can just see some absolutely brilliant weathering jobs and sort of see, scenery being done.
Yeah. Shane says bridge and part of the casing, no hull at all. No, Shane, that's it. That's all you get. What you see in that illustration is what you get. He said, now the pennies drop. Just part of the hull above the waterline. Yeah, but like I say, you can build like a little vignette, put some figures on it. I think that'd be fabulous. Now, but we've just said what a fantastically imaginative release. Then Miniart said, "Hold my beer," because Miniart have come up with gardening tools. Now, somebody who likes to combine modelling, the interests of modelling and gardening, the best of both worlds for me. This is you get in this set, and again, terrifically imaginative set. You get a little wheelbarrow, you get some sacks, there's a sack of spuds there by the looks of things. You get a little bench, watering can, garden tools, bucket, scythe, a whole load of forks, rakes, pickaxe, hand scythe. You also get a section of garden fencing as well. Now, a lot of these accessories have probably been pulled from other Miniart accessories, but this is the beauty of what Miniart do. They pull things together and kind of get new.
Yeah, they can mix and match.
Yeah, mix and match.
So
even if you're not necessarily going to be building, you're not going to be building a diorama like that. You're not going to be doing your 1/35 scale Monty Don doing his Gardener's World. A lot of these things can be incorporated into military vehicles as stowage. Obviously dioramas and things, but yeah. Again, how about a 35th scale watering can? Let's all think about that for a second. Ladder, like I say, garden bench there, fence, a cart. Don't know about you. Contender for kit of the year, I reckon.
I wouldn't go that. I wouldn't be so bold. I wouldn't be so bold just yet. But bearing in mind that Miniart, I've got a P47 to come yet.
Yes.
but no, it's just it's Miniart's weekly. Yes, very good. Yes, it's Miniart's weekly foray into the deeply interesting, isn't it? So I just want to address one thing. Clint was asking if I'd videoed the P51 build. No, I didn't, Clint. Sorry. I just wanted to build. Yeah, no, I just wanted to build. I'm finding myself get too wrapped up in editing videos to enjoy the build. So at the moment, I'm not doing it. Sorry, but
I think we will. I think we will get around to doing another video at some stage, because I think we could probably split the duties. Is that you shoot it, I edit it. So I'll have a think about that. We'll have a chat about that offline, I think. Let's move on. Let's move on. Now this flashed up on our feed this week, and this is Hella. Now this is a rebox of the Trumpeter 1/16. Get me teeth in. The Trumpeter 1/16 scale Panzer III. Now they're doing this and the Stug as reboxes. Now this came up via our good friends at the Frew Model Centre, because they're doing it for £110 plus P&P. Yes, I know that's, we shouldn't talk lightly about kits that cost £100, especially in this current economic climate. To mitigate that, if you have a look at the parts count on there, that's 1,500 plus pieces. So this is one of those things you could spend £110 on 4 different models to occupy you over the next few months or so, or you can invest it all in one. You're certainly going to get your money's worth with this, because that's a lot of bits, isn't it?
Well, I'm just looking at the best part of 18 inches long, isn't it? It's a big.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of vehicle. That is a lot of vehicle. So, yeah, I mean, I've got no idea what the reviews were like of the kit when you
no,
the original Trumpeter kit are. But
I've seen pictures of it, and it's there's nothing leaps out to my eye that looks horrendously wrong. I'm sure armor aficionados are going to point to the wrong shape hex bolts and things like that, but it didn't look that bad. I'm sure we'll get inundated by people telling us that that there are heinous things wrong with it. But in terms of I think a lot of people are going to probably buy something like this. They're not going to be that worried if the tracks aren't the right ones for the era or something.
Yeah. I'd like to. I don't know. There's something about that packaging that's just very.
I was going to say, it's very insipid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, the painting is quite nice if you look at it in its own right. The painting is actually quite nice, but that packaging is pretty awful, I have to say.
We've had this discussion before about Hella packaging, and
I mean, fortunately, a couple of years ago they did some box arts that were truly abysmal as well, didn't they? And I have to say that box art, if you look at it in isolation, that's actually not a bad piece of box art.
The actual painting is very nice.
There's enough going on there to make it interesting and engaging. But the way it holds together with that horrible yellow border and stuff like that. Come on, Hella, you can do better than this.
I think I can almost understand their reasoning there, because obviously you've got the Airfix boxes are red. They stick out like a sore thumb in shops. So you're not going to go down that route. You've got Revell's packaging now is that black packaging, which I'm not a big fan of it.
I don't like that at all. I thought Revell had it down with the blue packaging.
Yeah,
I thought that was a nice sort of color scheme.
They did the same when they took on the Matchbox range in the early 1990s, as they went over to this black packaging, and it just doesn't do anything for me. But yeah, they've I don't know. I mean, it's I do love Hella, but I just think sometimes their packaging just doesn't do them any favors. Discuss.
No. Well, there's nothing to discuss really. It's just we're in violent agreement, aren't we? Essentially, it doesn't sell itself to it that way. Like Dave Fleming there says, Hella haven't done good packaging since the black box era, which is ironic. As soon as we're talking about the other black box stuff you get these days, not really appealing to us. But yeah, the black box Hella era was when I first started building Hella kits, and they were really, really good pieces of box art for the era, for the time,
Yeah.
But I'd certainly rather they went back to something closer to that than this.
Yeah, that's weird, because that really was a a kind of era of black packaging that that did work. That was something that something that did look good. But I don't know. I mean, I know people often think that we're always kind of happy, clappy, and really upbeat on this show, but I think sometimes we do have to kind of like comment on things that are a bit meh. And I bought, what was it? It was one of the Hella kits that I bought from. This is one of their packaging things from about 5 years ago. You open it up, on the inside of the box is like a brown recycled cardboard with modeling hints that are printed in dark brown. So it's kind of, you can't see a darn thing. And as ever with Hella, we've had this recently. Decals, they still can't get on top of decals. And I've bought some kits of theirs, which the things like the Saphir and the Cauldron and stuff like that, and the decals have just been completely unusable.
Yeah, it's very much a case of they're sadly for Hella, as far as I'm concerned, their glory days are 40 years past. And it is 40 years past.
Yeah, so we were talking about regrettably terrible box art by Hella. This one I think is the belter. It's
ghastly, isn't it?
Yeah. Although why they're all on the Photoshop beach there being shot at. A couple of them are looking quite chipper. Especially kind of like Gunner Freddie Mercury down on the bottom right. He seems to think it's a kind of magic for some reason. So
a guy with a Tam O'Shanter on there, what's he?
No idea.
What is going on there?
What is going on?
He looks like some kind of, I don't know, Bart Simpson.
No, that is actually a French unit. But no, that's
I'm talking about the actual painting of the face. It looks like some Bart Simpson.
Oh, it's all been photoshopped on top of Photoshop. It's
horrendous, isn't it?
Oh. I think we will at some stage.
Oh, but it's ghastly. Stop it.
What we're going to do on one stage on one of the midweek shows, we will have our top 10 of the worst box art ever.
I think we found it.
Well, there are.
I mean, at least the NPC stuff was amusing and made you laugh.
Did I ever show you those ones for that figure company where they were like really badly photoshopped pictures on the cover for that?
Yes, yeah.
That's even better. So we will actually have a top 10 of absolute shockers. Just a bit of light-hearted fun. We're not having a go at the companies, but if you're going to put your packaging out there and it's a bit sorry. Anyway, shall we move on from this controversy? I lost my schedule again. There we go. Next up on the list. Well, we're back to the Ocean Waves again. Now, this is a new company. I know we always joke that you go and make a cup of tea these days, you come back, there's a new model company has turned up. Well, this is a company called 4 Hobby, and they've already released one kit, which is this S-Boat S38. Which is the early 1942 model. They're following that up now with the S38B. Now, the difference here is that apparently the S38Bs benefited from what known as the Lursen effect modifications, which was a form of wave-making resistance when the boat was kind of bombing along. And it was apparently sorted out by having 2 small rudders mounted either side of the main one, and they were slightly canted outboard. And this just kind of like forced the water away from the hull, lifted the stern, and it just made them a lot more quicker, with a lot less energy being expended. So. And apparently it was a phenomena that was discovered by the Lursen Werft shipbuilding company, Bremen Vijasak. My German's not great, but anyway.
No, really.
Sorry.
No, really. Sorry.
Anyway, he's tired, ladies and gentlemen. He's tired and he needs feeding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is actually probably technically correct, isn't it?
No, I don't think I think I probably need burping and putting to bed. It's again, I've never heard of 4Hobby, but like, when you said, you go and make a cup of tea and another company has appeared. The flip side of that is we seem to have a consistent amount of companies, because every time one appears, another one seems to disappear almost. So,
or they just come along, do a couple of models, and then they're gone.
Yeah, there's lots of those, certainly. I'm making an assumption that this is a company from China, based on the writing underneath the Chanel boot, because it is Chinese, isn't it? It's not
that's Chinese,
not Korean or anything. So yeah, it seems that companies come and go from China, almost weekly. So I'd be interesting to see if they're still here in 2 years' time, or if the molds have moved on somewhere else. But it's certainly an interesting subject, and you'd like to think that maybe at some point that'll expand to include, redone Vosper MTBs and stuff like that. Because it seems to have been consistently popular. Certainly, the Airfix 72nd scale ones have always been popular, haven't they? Whenever they're released, so there's obviously a gap in the market for it in 72nd scale. So,
Revell have done S boats in 72nd scale. I'm just doing a quick Google here. They did the S100 class amongst.
And somebody's done PT boats as well, haven't they?
They have, yeah.
Somebody's done PT boats.
It's a fabulous looking thing, though, isn't it?
Yes, I mean these are sort of boats that were presumably responsible for some of the things like the Lyme Regis disaster and things like that.
Oh, Slapton Sand.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm presuming these are the sort of boats that were involved in that.
Yeah.
Which would make them very, very interesting, if somewhat macabre subjects.
But I just think, because you can see the between the two kits, you can see the obviously the differences with the rudders and things, but the differences with the bridges as well.
Yeah, and chunky as well. 480, so nearly 500 millimeters long.
That's just short of 2 feet.
Yeah, that's a big old bus, as we'd say.
Yeah, but I just think of the two, I
like that one. I like the B definitely.
It does look fabulous. In fact, you just reminded me of an Airfix e-boat upstairs, which we'll come back to that at the end of the show, actually. But yeah, another new kit company, 4. So, and I've seen the prices for this, and it's kind of like hovers around about the £50 mark, which I think is pretty reasonable.
No, that's I would have expected more. But that's 1003. So the previous one is 1002, is it? 1001. So. Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
There's a 1002 lurking somewhere, then presumably.
There's a mystery for you.
Interesting subject. I think, I hope, as with all of these companies that come out, I hope they do well, and I hope it does well for them, and they continue to sort of expand in that particular furrow.
But would that? I know you have a transient interest in ships. Would that float? Literally, would that float your boat?
Closer than a lot of stuff, but I still, for whatever reason, my interest in shipping remains with commercial. Commercial stuff. If somebody was to do a 700 scale oil tanker or something, I would be more interested in that. Than I would perhaps even sort of a 144th or 200 scale trawler or something like that I'd be interested in. I don't know why my interest veers to, because in general my modelling is aircraft and armour and almost entirely military. But apart from some civil 144th aircraft, but for some reason commercial shipping just appeals to me more than military shipping. Hey ho.
It'd be boring if we were all the same.
Yeah. It's just it's one that I don't understand why that's happened either. So
we'll discuss that at a later date. On the psychiatrist chair with Drew Mountain. Anyway,
I wouldn't go there.
Actually, I will tell you this. Actually, a good friend of mine, I won't name him, but he doesn't like submarine films, and I've said to him, "Oh, you've got to watch The Hunt for Red October." He cannot physically sit down and watch submarine films. He just doesn't like the idea of
vicarious
submarine
claustrophobia.
Possibly. He also says that they tend to be boring, which I kind of say to him, watch The Hunt for Red October. And he's like, no, it's boring. And I'm just like, oh, really? Hunt for Red October or The Bedford Incident. Have you ever seen The Bedford Incident?
It rings a bell, but I don't have your film.
No, I must say, most of your kind of like film culture is usually when you come up here and I introduce you to films, essentially. So, burn. Actually, yeah, we done that. We did, because we did that with Colossus, the Forbin project. Which
I'm not saying you don't. I'm not saying you don't.
But then you distinctly didn't like 2001. So, which I think was probably the last time you came up here, actually. So,
probably was. Yeah, that film just drags for me. Just drags. Sorry.
Let's move on. Sorry,
Steve,
got a comment, have we?
Genuine question, Drew. Do you build helicopter models? I hope so, because I've got hundreds of them. In fact, we were looking at one just last show, weren't we? The Venom, UH-1Y Venom. So
yes,
I do buy a lot more. I do buy a lot more helicopters than I build, but then I buy a lot more aeroplane kits than I build. But my day job involves building helicopters as well, so real ones. So I do, Steve. I do build helicopters, and I keep meaning to. I want to build that Venom. The Icebreaker was on hiatus for the Mustang, but when that Mustang's out of the way, I'll pick it up and do a bit more on that. With a lot of these big Zvezda projects, I tend to, stuff sort of, I do a week on it and then go and do something else and then come back to it and do another week on it, unless I'm being pressured to finish it. So,
yeah. Well, it's only 8 months till Telford, so
Well, that's the thing. I'll probably pick it up in October, won't I? In the middle of October. The Icebreaker, and I'll smash it out.
Just as you suddenly asked to smash out, another. We'll tell that story. We'll tell that story on Wednesday, actually. And Anthony says, with all that etch in the kit, very good price. Yeah, this is the that 4 model.
Oh, right. There's got a lot of etch in the kit.
Yeah. So
I think 50 quid is
it's around that. Don't quote me on that. Yeah. I looked and it was around. I saw prices between about 50 and 60 quid.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it was overpriced if it was 75, something like that. Yeah. I would have thought that was, considering how much of a kit you get there, how much model there is in that. So
last one for tonight, and this is, I got to say, this is one of my. It's a vehicle I always liked since I built the Matchbox kit back in 2010, actually, and that is Border are bringing us a brand new Jagdpanzer IV Lang. This is the early one. Not much to say about this other than they're saying that it's been designed by T-Rex Studio in China. It includes photo etch parts. It includes 3 types of brake muzzles, and they put this stuff here and you can't read it. It also includes. I'm just going to grab the image and blow it up a bit. Here we go. And it also includes
side skirt armor, metal gun barrel, jerry cans, and Sherman tracks and wheels, and things.
That's it. Thank you, Drew. Yeah. In fact, that is an interesting thing on that, is that it does include the Sherman tracks and road wheel, or idler wheel rather, as part of the additional armor.
That appeals to me. I like that. That's I tend to really like the German tank hunter, tank destroyer designs. I think they always looked mean.
I just, ever since I ever since I saw the Matchbox kit as a kid in the catalogue, can never find the darn thing. But ever since I saw that, and also seeing the pictures in the Tamiya catalogue of their Jagdpanzer IV, I just always think it just looks. It compared to the Jagdpanther, I think these just look a bit meaner.
It's small as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's teeny. You know, which is like, I mean, I know people don't like you calling it the Hetzer, but when you call it the Hetzer, everybody knows what you're talking about. So I'm going to call it the Hetzer. But that's, you know, that's tiny, isn't it?
It's fabulous looking vehicle. I just that kind of sloped armor and the shape of it, and it's, you know, it's kind of like it's like a better looking Stug, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's a really attractive. I think that's a really attractive vehicle with a really attractive color scheme. I like that.
Fabulous box art as well, isn't it?
Yeah, really nice, really nice. Yeah. That firefly in the background there.
And yeah, and this is based on Border's previous Panzer IV bits and pieces. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see more news on that as and when they start releasing it. But I think that's a solid move by Border, who seem to be kind of, you know, building a bit of a name for themselves now.
Yeah, they certainly seem to be coming through as one of the major players in that sort of area of 35th scale, don't they? And I know that T-Rex have got a good reputation for their design work because they've done stuff for Meng and I think Tacom, haven't they? T-Rex have. There's sort of he is a one-man design studio. I think he's does his own, and I think he's a gun for hire, shall we say, for the Chinese manufacturers. Who's built himself a good reputation. So yeah, I like it.
I'm going to call this up, and this is Airfix posted this week, and that is that classic 14th edition catalogue cover. Isn't it just? As a kid, I've probably still got this catalogue kicking around. I haven't got the cover to it anymore, but I've still got the actual catalogue. And who didn't get that? Who wouldn't have seen that as a kid and just thought, oh, I want to build that one and that one and that one and that one and that one. Do you know what? There are still some things on that cover that are actually on my bucket list to build. I can see 4 immediately.
Which are?
Can you guess what they are?
I don't know. Given the way you vary and what you build these days, John, I wouldn't. It could be
okay. It is the 1/12 scale Bentley.
Right.
Still like to get around to building one of them one day. We were talking about earlier on, actually, the Airfix e-boat.
Yes.
We're talking about S-boats tonight. I've got the Airfix e-boat up in the attic. I've always wanted to build that. Always looking for an excuse to build that. I'd love to get hold of the Airfix Grant, which you can see down at the bottom right there, because they did that and the Lee. I don't think, you know, the problem we got there is they're 32nd scale, and they're just
yeah.
What do you do? Do you bring them back as the vintage classics range and just accept the fact that they're just well,
I think as long as you bring them back as a vintage classics range, it's it is what it says on the tin, isn't it? You know, it's 32nd scale. You know, it's not intended to be
part of the 35th scale.
Yeah, part of the 35th scale range, because it's not being sold as such. So as long as the tooling is still good and it's still a good model, and you're clear about why you're releasing it, then I don't see a problem.
I'd like to see it come back, and pure. I'd like to see a kit company invest all that money in bringing back a kit just for me. But it's just, it hasn't been in production for, goodness me, for about 45 years or so, about 44, 43 years. I think the latest it was around was the late 70s, but that's it. Ain't been around since then. And the other one, go on.
I was going to say the two that really my eye are drawn to are the Heinkel 177 and the Draken, but they've both been surpassed by kits since then. But they're the two that would have been bucket listers for me when I was younger.
The only other one up there which I've always wanted to build, either as the 32nd scale one or the, I think it was 1/12 scale, and that's the Skinner's Horse. You can see the Bengal Lancer to the left.
Yes,
there.
yeah.
fabulous subject choice by Airfix to actually highlight, you know, the service of Indian troops, you know, during during the various conflicts down the years, and you know, to actually commemorate them into a kit, I thought was fantastic.
I think we refer to it as the 1940s unpleasantness now, don't we?
Yes, exactly. But yeah, there's. I'm just looking up there. I mean, I'm just looking at that, thinking, God, how many of those have I? How many of those have I actually built?
What strikes me most is the sheer variety of
Yeah.
subject matter there.
Yeah.
I don't think Airfix have had quite that variety of subject matter probably since those days. You know, active in the range at any given time.
At any one time, I'm looking at that, and I can say that out of everything that's on that page there, about the only things that have not come back in the last kind of 10, 15, 20 years or so, not the train stuff, because that was sold to Daypol, not the historic figures, or were they? No, I don't think the historic figures have come back. So you've got Anne Boleyn and the Henry VIII and the lifeguard there. But apart from that, the sailing ships, the Bentley, the 24 scale stuff, the things like the E-boat. I'm just looking down there. The Crusader has come back. The 32nd scale Crusader has come back. I think it was about mid 1990s that they did some box sets of the 54mm collector's series figures. They've come back. But to me, that's still just kind of like makes me think, you know, God, what a great hobby. You know, it just the variety.
The most surprising thing for me about that cover is the fact that aircraft are not dominant.
No.
Which you would, you know, whichever way you cut it, Airfix's reputation is largely based on the aircraft range, and it is for most manufacturers. And then you look at that picture there, and then you realise that aircraft aren't really dominant in that picture at all. There's, you know, everything from sailing ships to Bengal Lancers. It's just, it's a phenomenal breadth of subjects.
Mm-hmm. No, I just think, you know, to me that is still to a greater extent, that is still how I see the hobby. Just that variety out there, just that.
And like Brian says there, the bluebirds aren't on it, or the dinosaurs. So, you know, even then, there's an even wider breadth of subjects that aren't even on there.
Yeah.
Dave Fleming says, what year was that?
I think I was 77, I think.
I was going to say 76 or 77, something like that, I would think.
Yeah. It's, we'd love to lose to the Dennis Fire Engine. I think the Dennis Fire, well, this is the weird thing, Gary, is I was about to say, oh, the Dennis Fire Engine came out quite recently. And then I remembered that was 1991. Oh, I know. Yeah, I'd like to see the because they did the series. Well, actually, because I know we've got a couple of the Hornby guys watching tonight, actually. So we'll throw this at them. Is about 10 years ago, it was the wildlife presenter Simon King got in contact with me to say, because of my connections with the company, and he said about, are the birds still available? And the reason why I asked for that is because he was doing a lot of work with people with, people who are partially sighted or blind. He was able to teach them about birds through touch. And he wanted to know whether these birds were available so that he could, unfortunately they're not, but I tell you what, I think they're worth a punt to bring back, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, again, I think sort of as long as they're released in context, it's the Airfix Classics. Why not?
part of the vintage classics range. But I'd like to. But out of all them, I'd love to see the 54mm figures come back, the collector series figures. You probably wouldn't be able to do them individually. You probably have to do them as like box sets, possibly. And the Skinner's horse as well. I'd love to do that one. And John Patrick Huston says, was that Mini 30 seconds cut? It was. And I think from what I remember, John, that the tooling ended up going off somewhere for, I think it was the people who do the slot car racing. And so it vanished from the range. So since then, ironically, Airfix didn't have the 30-second scale Mini anymore, which is, to me, that's the Spitfire of cars, isn't it?
Yeah. Dave says Brontosaurus there. That was probably the first Airfix kit I ever built. Brontosaurus.
Can we call it a Brontosaurus these days? What's the one we can't call it?
Well, it was released as a Brontosaurus, so I'm going to go with we're all right to call it a Brontosaurus. But Brachiosaurus doesn't exist anymore.
That's it. You have to call it an Apatosaurus, don't you?
I don't think it's even a Apatosaurus now.
No.
There are various. A lot has changed with dinosaurs in the last. Since I was mad about them when I was 6 and 7 years old till when I picked it up again just recently, an awful lot has changed.
No, I'm afraid the Brachiosaurus literally has gone extinct.
Yes, and
for the second time in its existence.
For anybody who's interested in dinosaurs, Terrible Lizards podcast. I
will quickly tell you the story. A few years ago, when they were doing it was the Jurassic Park. Was it Jurassic Park or Walking with Dinosaurs? It was one or the other. No, it was Walking with Dinosaurs. They did an exhibition that was being held at the Museum and Art Gallery at top of Park Street in Bristol. And I went with some friends. And they were too slow walking there, because as we got within sight of the museum, I just went charging up the steps, arms flailing. To the door, and I'm like, come on, it's dinosaurs in there. Yeah. I
won't even get started on Deinonychus and how Jurassic Park ruined it forever.
Well, actually, we will. We got some time. I will say this is, if you go back through 2000 AD comic. I don't know if you grew up reading 2000 AD comic, did you? Yeah, okay. Two things is, first of all, they used to have one of the first stories they ran was a series called Flesh.
Yep.
Which was about cowboys who travel back in time to harvest dinosaurs for food.
Yep.
Why nobody's made a film of that, I don't know, right? Cowboys versus dinosaurs. It's like Valley of the Gwangi on steroids. And there was a character in that called Claw Carver, who his hand had been bitten off and he had a claw, and he was getting into fights with Deinonychus, you see, or raptors. And so before Jurassic Park, you had raptors being portrayed in comics with their big claws and everything, and it was like, 2000 AD was Michael Crichton. 2000 AD was first. You see,
but I can remember the first time when I first saw Jurassic Park. The Deinonychus had been one of my favourite dinosaurs from when I was about 6 or 7 years old, purely because of how it looked. I can remember going to see Jurassic Park, and they said this is a Velociraptor, and I just went, "That's a Deinonychus, not a Velociraptor."
Yeah,
and I went, "No, you've ruined it. You ruined it." Plus the fact they were the size of turkeys rather than.
And they were feathered, but apart from that,
but apart from that,
but also, people are watching this thinking, what are we tuned into now? We're talking about comic books, for God's sake. Also, the Judge Dredd saga, The Cursed Earth, or The Cursed Earth, but I always call it The Cursed Earth. At one stage, halfway through the run, they came across a dinosaur theme park where dinosaurs were genetically engineered using frog DNA, and they were grown in little eggs that hatched, and they then made a theme park out of it called Dino World. Yes.
So the comments are getting a bit sort of, oh, Dave's like, let's not talk about what they did to Dilophosaurus.
Yeah, well, that was just complete fiction, really. But 2000 AD got there first. So Michael Crichton, you know, sorry, but
eat your heart. Eat your heart.
He clearly read 2000 AD at some stage. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, on that note, we are going to have to end this for tonight. We'll talk comics. We'll talk comics and films and you know, and terrible box art on another you know, on another podcast at some
Another
stage.
occasion.
Another occasion. So it just remains for me to say, any other business?
No, I'm on late this week, so I won't be about Wednesday.
Okay, fair enough. So, we'll find somebody to fill in for you.
Just letting you know.
Yeah. Might have a word with that Reeves chap. He might.
If Mike will give you a little look in. Yeah. Interesting tangents again this evening. We managed to get from Schnell boots to Deinonychus in 2 steps.
Absolutely, yeah. We awesome segue, I reckon. Yeah, I'll have a word with Mike on. Might have Mike on Wednesday. Now you're going to finish off your Mustang, aren't you?
In the next day or two, yeah. Hopefully, I'll get that
and post some beauty shots up.
Yes, and then I'll start looking at maybe doing a little bit more on the icebreaker. But I also really want to get one of those IBG Doras underway. I think having got them last week, it's incumbent, really, isn't it, to get one of them on the way as soon as possible.
Well, now that my beach buggy is done, I can progress a bit more now with a clearer conscience on my awesome Lafley V15, which I'm still enjoying immensely. Really, really enjoying that. It's such a mad subject, but yeah, I'm loving that.
He's loving it.
Really,
he's loving it. Right. Okay then.
Yeah. On that note, so as always, stay safe, stay out of trouble, beware of cake, and we will be back on
beware of cake and parties.
Absolutely, we'll be back on Wednesday. So until then, see you later.
Take care, all. Bye.